The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Yes, I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back. How quaint that is. Back from 1981 after John Riggins had sat out a season and Joe Gibbs, the new coach, had gone to his house in Kansas and asked him to come back and play. And here we are in 2025, and Terry McLaurin, symbolic of the turnaround of this organization, the one who is exactly the type of person on and off the field that they want, has now requested a trade. It has come to this. I never would have thought it. I don't know about you, but it's hard to believe that here we are, August 1st, and Terry McLaurin wants out. Now, look, it's part of negotiations. It may be that this ignites the trade talks and he does get traded, or that, in fact, that they will sign a new deal. The team has been adamant that they're not going to trade him. They don't comment very often on this stuff, but they have made it pretty clear they're not going to trade him. And look, he's 30 years old. Even if you do trade him, what are you going to get back in return? And the team that takes him, you're going to have to give him a contract extension. Are you going to make that kind of an investment in a guy who's looking for top dollar? Maybe there's a team that feels they're that close and they can do it, teams that have cap space, but clearly it's not happening here. This was Adam Schefter breaking the news yesterday afternoon.
He has not received the contract he has wanted. The two sides have not made any type of meaningful progress. And while he awaits a new deal, he's lost confidence that he can get it from Washington. And so a team that is awash in good vibes now has its first negative story, a controversy that hangs over this franchise. It's popular, respected, talented wide receiver Terry McLaurin now has asked to be traded. Now, the Commanders have had no interest in moving on from Terry McLaurin, but I know there have been other teams that have been monitoring the situation, waiting to see if the circumstances change. Now that McLaurin has requested a trade, we'll see if that does anything to loosen Washington's grip on him. But up until now, the Commanders have had zero interest in moving on from McLaurin. He's shaking it up. He's now requested a trade.
Yeah, they have been awash in good vibes, haven't they? This is one of those ones where you go, whew, man, how about this? Where would he go? There's a list of teams that I will get to. There are suggestions that there might be a possibility, although, again, with the age, with the contract, with what they'd have to give up, it doesn't seem likely. But Tim Hasselbeck, who spent some time playing for this franchise years ago, and Steve Spurrier was the coach, now an analyst with ESPN. If they are going to trade him, here's where he thinks is the best destination.
I would say the New England Patriots. You look at the Patriots, they're a team that I think is, struggled with some veteran receivers that they've had there that I think could end up being on the move when you just look at guys that are either cut or possibly traded. And I think McLaurin, who I believe the hang-up in Washington is his age and really, how old he'll be at the end of a deal. But I think when you look at Mike Vrabel, kind of the unselfishness of McLaurin, the type of player he's been, I actually think that ends up being a really good fit, especially when you have a quarterback in Drake May who's on that rookie contract. So New England would be a fit if it did happen, but I'm probably with you on the potential of it actually coming to fruition.
Yeah, well, a couple of things with New England that would be attractive. Again, the young quarterback in Drake May, second year, like Jaden Daniels, second year here. You also have a new coach who's looking to try and create a good culture, and Terry is obviously great at that. Would that be a likely trade partner? Maybe. Here's some other possibilities. Indianapolis Colts, their quarterback situation not great. Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, so a veteran wide receiver might help either one of them to step up to a new level. Kansas City. Kansas City is interesting. Now, this is another thing about these top teams and top teams with quarterbacks on veteran deals, not the rookie deal that Jaden Daniels is on. they're not loaded up on these receivers. So here are the receivers now for Kansas City: Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. Yeah, wouldn't you like to have Terry McLaurin with arguably the greatest quarterback in the game? Yeah, that's a possibility. Raiders, 34-year-old Geno Smith, 73-year-old coach. 30-year-old receiver might not bother them. Plus, they got the great tight end in Brock Bowers. Might be a good compliment there. Chargers, Jim Harbaugh. Would he take on an Ohio State guy? Yeah, why not? He's also interested in building culture there. They've got Ladd McConkey, and they have cap space. They got about $30 million going into this season, so they do have the money to bring him in. The Jets, well, they got cap space, and they have a new quarterback in Justin Fields, who is an Ohio State guy, and their passing game coordinator, not that they necessarily made magic together, but McLaurin was good on a team that was really bad with Scott Turner. So Scott Turner is the passing game coordinator for the Jets, whatever that means. And then the San Francisco 49ers, who Adam Peters seems to have a very comfortable relationship in making deals with. They've got Brandon Ayuk, who's still coming off the injury, and Ricky Pearsall. So if you add Terry McLaurin to Brock Purdy and a team that has a good defense, you never know. But again, what you'd have to give up. Now, the amount of money that McLaurin is reportedly looking for, here are the comps. And these numbers are so dizzying. You say to yourself every time you hear one of them, well, isn't that enough? But it's all about keeping score. It's all about respect. It's all about, just like the housing market, comps. So you got Tyreek Hill, who signed with Miami at age 30, a 3-year extension for $30 million a year with $52.5 million guaranteed. He was coming off consecutive seasons of gaining at least 1,700 yards. To be fair to Terry, this was the first year that he really had a good quarterback. And all the dozen or so quarterbacks that he played with before, no comparison to Jaden Daniels. Also, Mike Evans at 31 signed a 2-year deal for $41 million and $35 million guaranteed. He had caught 46 passes over the previous 4 seasons before the extension. Yeah, I mean, a short-term deal would make some sense in there. Denver signed Cortland Sutton, who's turning 30 in October, so he's almost exactly the same age as McLaurin. 4 years, $92 million, $41 million guaranteed. Terry McLaurin is better than Cortland Sutton, but how much better? How much more money would it take to bring him in? Other notables: T. Higgins, 4 years, $115 million, $40.9 million guaranteed. DK Metcalf, that's the one that is most comparable here. 4 years, $132 million, $60 million guaranteed, but he's 2 years younger. And then the Jets, Garrett Wilson, 4 years, $130 million, $90 million guaranteed. I know these are just, blowing past you like how the adults talk on Peanuts. Kind of like, that's money, more money than you could ever imagine having in your life. But that's the wide receiver market. Now, just to put everything into context, hard to believe this was only 2 weeks ago, with all that has transpired since then. But this was only 2 weeks ago. It was July 15th. It was a Monday. Terry McLaurin was shooting an Eastern Motors commercial. He was just over a week before he was due to report with the veterans to training camp in Ashburn. And he laid it all out. He went about a half an hour with this news conference. This was how he answered the first question as to why they were there talking to him about contract on the 15th of July.
I've been pretty frustrated, I'm not going to lie. Everything that has transpired up until this point has just been disappointing and frustrating. I've wanted to continue my career here. I've created my life here. My wife and I have bought our first home here. So this has been somewhere where I've always wanted to be. And, just to see how things have played out has been disappointing. Obviously, I understand everything's a business, but at the same time, I want to put myself in a position where, I'm valued and, I feel appreciated and things like that. And, unfortunately, that hasn't transpired the way I wanted to. So, I'm just trying to take things day by day. And at the beginning of this process, I honestly just wanted to, for things to work out. And, I thought things were going to kind of be more progressive than they have, and so at this point it's kind of just up in the air.
Has it surprised you that they've taken whatever tack they've taken, and have you now opened your mind up to being somewhere else?
I haven't got to that part yet. It has been disappointing. Going into this offseason, I thought there was going to be more progress. And, I know those discussions were there at the beginning. And, since OTAs and minicamp, we haven't had any discussions. We haven't talked at all. And, that's tough, obviously with camp coming around the corner. And so I haven't thought that far yet to really, see what's next in the standpoint of leaving or not, because I want to be here. I want to make that abundantly clear. Like, I really appreciate this fan base, this city. This place has become my home. I've poured a lot of myself and given everything that I've can every single day since I've been here, through the wins, losses, good, bad. And, but at the end of the day, you do want to feel valued and you do want to feel appreciated. And I think, how the market is today, it pretty much conveys what guys of my caliber are deserving of. And I feel like I fit that in that box because of just how I've always carried myself on and off the field and the value I know I bring to a team. And I know I bring to my teammates, and I know that I bring to an organization. And, I don't want to put myself in a position to feel like you have to beg for somebody to see your worth and your value. You feel like you've put that out there year in, year out. Everything, previous regimes and even now, I've done everything that's been asked of me. I'm not perfect at all. I've definitely made mistakes, but I've always led with the right foot. And I've tried to put myself in a position to be a person that can be valued and respected amongst his coaches and his teammates, but also be a dog on the field. I don't want to get that mistaken. I feel like I'm one of the best receivers in this league. And, it's not because of me just feeling that way. I feel like I've proven that, and I'm going to continue to work hard to prove that. And that's kind of where things are. So I haven't really, gotten to the part of trade or not. Like, I want things to work out, but at the end of the day, like, it takes two to tango, you know what I mean? And so however things go these next few days, I know camp's around the corner. I'll talk to my agent and we'll go from there. But overall, you just want to be appreciated and valued for who you are and what you bring to the team, and also what you feel like you could continue to do, because best believe I don't feel like I played my best ball yet, and I still feel like I have a lot of great things that I can do and bring to a team. And so it's disappointing that it's gotten to this point, and the toughest part is being away from my teammates, honestly, because I came into part of OTAs and things like that with the assumption things were going to progress a lot quicker than they have, and it's disappointing because I've always been a team guy and a leader. And the great thing about, the great thing I take away is I've gotten a lot of support from my teammates. I've played golf with them. I've hung out with them. I've talked to multiple guys, and they know where I stand. They know how I feel. And I think the tough part is they have to decipher things through the media. And, they know I'm an open book. So everybody I've talked to, I've been 100% open and honest with them of where I stand and how things have been. And so I know I got their respect and their support, and I'm going to continue to prove that when I'm on the field, whenever that time is. So, just because I'm in this scenario doesn't change the fact of who I am and my character, because I'm going to continue to be Terry McLaurin no matter where I'm at. And that's who's God's built me to be. That's who I've tried to prove who I am, and I'm going to continue to walk in that.
That was Terry McLaurin on the 15th of July. 8 days later, he was due to report with the veterans to training camp, did not show up, missed Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Team was off on Saturday. He reported on Sunday, accumulating $200,000 in fines to go along with the $100,000 in fines that he got for missing minicamp, mandatory minicamp. He is now there. That's a little fuzzy with how they're doing this. Realistically, he's in, but he's out. He's supposedly rehabbing an ankle injury, which nobody had heard of until he showed up on Sunday. So he's now not working with the team, working with the trainers. When he comes out on the field, the fans go crazy. He signs a bunch of autographs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he is not signed to an extension, and then things take yesterday a major ramp up with reports from a variety of sources that he has requested a trade. He wants out. Now, this has happened before. Myles Garrett did this in the offseason. Looked like he was on his way out of Cleveland till they gave him a record amount of money. Lamar Jackson, a couple of years ago, requested a trade from the Ravens when talks weren't going the way he wanted them to. They signed him to an extension. This could be a power move but it also could be the Commanders are saying, okay, we love you, but we're only going to go so far. This is our first big negotiation, and we want to let all the players and all the agents know that we're going to do the right thing for a player. We're not going to overpay. We're not going to overpay on that. Even this guy, even Terry McLaurin, who, if anyone deserves to be overpaid, it would seem, at least to me, having gone through all the mishigas that he had to go through in his first 5 seasons here, the coaches that came and went, the coordinators that came and went, the parade of really bad to mediocre quarterbacks at best that he had to play with. And now everything comes together. He's the beacon of how a player should act on and off the field, team captain, et cetera, et cetera. Now, sometimes when you have a situation like this, there's the locker room that's pissed off. Like, God, we got to have Terry. What are they doing to Terry? And if they're going to do this to Terry, what does that mean for me? Sometimes there's that. You got to give Jaden Daniels credit for this. He's being a team guy right now. He's not making any noise about, hey, I really need Terry in here. We got to make sure we get Terry signed. If we're going to have a good season, Terry and I got to get our timing together. This is how Jaden Daniels addressed that yesterday at his news conference.
It's great having Terry back in the building, and, we just communicate like a normal day. Talk about ball, we talk about life, so, nothing's changed at all.
The last time you were in here, you talked about, the great connection you guys formed last year. It's going to come back. That being said, it's 1 year you guys have had together. How important is it to you that he's able to get back on the field sooner than later to sort of continue to build on what you had last year?
I think it's super important for everybody. Just get as many rests as possible before the big show, the real thing is to happen. But I know the time will come, and till then, if that's us getting in the film room and watching film and just talking, that's other ways we could do it. But, like I said, man, nothing's changed since Terry's been back in the building. When he was out of the building, we always talk. We talk ball, we talk life, and so nothing's changed at all.
So he's not in any way hurting management on this. He could have gone in another direction. Like, yeah, it's hey, it's August 1st. We got to get going here. We're going to open the season in 5 weeks. Got to have Terry back. Come on, let's get things. No, he's not going that direction. He's saying, yeah, well, he's here. Nothing's changed. He and I talk every day. If we can't do it on the field, we can do it together in the film room. Okay. So right now, it does appear that it's not bursting at the seams, but Terry is trying to put some real pressure, he and his agent, trying to put some real pressure on the team. We'll see if it works. I can't imagine he's going to get traded. I just can't imagine that's going to happen. But stranger things have happened. And if they were to trade him, what does that mean? What does that mean for this team? And as they go through the season, will there be a lot of second guessing? Like, oh, man, that was the missing piece, not just on the field, but in the locker room. And you made a mistake over a few $1 million. What the hell's the matter with you? So we'll see. As like we say in our business, we'll see how it all plays out. Coming up, we've got the vote today on the stadium and what one of the city council members said in relation to the McLaurin holdout here. Plus, we'll also talk about the trade deadline in baseball, and you got to tell your players by a scorecard now, as many Orioles and many Nationals have left the area. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We finish this show at 11 o'clock, and the stadium vote by the city council is not expected to start until 11 o'clock, probably after that. So I won't have the results of that. Indications are that they have the votes to pass. Phil Mendelson, the city council chairman, indicated that the other day. But there's still some last-minute jockeying going on, and this was D.C. council member Zachary Parker yesterday, day before the vote, on how things could still change. There still could be some last-minute changes. Remember the team sweetened things up the other day with a few different things that they added in, including $50 million for community and so forth, and they're going to build a grocery store and all those different things. But this is Parker on the comp to the Terry McLaurin situation and what could still conceivably happen with the deal between the city and the Commanders.
We are at what some would say the 1 yard line. And I liken this to the Commanders not yet striking a deal or signing or extending a deal with Terry McLaurin. And it's why? Because some people say he's asking for too much. And the Commanders, to their credit, they want to make sure they get the best deal possible. It's the same thing I'm doing. It's the same thing my colleagues are doing. We want the very best deal for DC, and that is what we have to have before tomorrow's vote.
Well, to Terry McLaurin, I don't know if he knew that when he said that, but the Terry McLaurin thing has taken an ugly turn with McLaurin requesting a trade. The other thing that's going to be interesting to watch, even if this is approved today by the city council, is that the Congress still has to approve, and that's not going to happen until September. This was Donald Trump yesterday, once again, on the team name. Now, he didn't go as far as saying this deal isn't going to happen without a name change, but he's still campaigning for that.
People want to see the Redskins, and the Indians want to see the Redskins back. No, I recommend it. I was asked that question the other day. The Washington Redskins, it's a fabled franchise. And now, I don't even know what the hell their last name is. What are they, Commanders or something? Is it Commanders? It's not a good name.
That's the opinion not just shared by Trump, but others. I would also inform the President of the United States that it's Native Americans, not Indians. Indians is the former name of the Cleveland Guardians. They're referred to as Native Americans, if you want to say that they support the name Redskins, and many do. Many do, but it's Native Americans, not Indians. Okay, let's get to the Nationals and what they did at the trade deadline. Mackenzie Gore is still here. They did not make a deal, and it would have fit in with what they've done in the past with Boras clients, that and particularly with Juan Soto, that they knew that he was going to be taken to free agency, and they didn't want to deal with Boras, so they dealt him away. And as it's turned out, it looks like they made as good a deal as they could possibly make for Juan Soto. They got some terrific players in return, including Mackenzie Gore, who is under team control through the 2027 season. Mike DeBartolo, the interim GM who replaced Mike Rizzo right before the All-Star break, discussed with reporters yesterday what they did and what they didn't do and why they didn't deal Mackenzie Gore.
We value him very highly, obviously, as a all-star starting pitcher under team control for 2 more years. And so he's a big part of our team, a big part of the club going forward. And, again, in my position, you listen on anything that's brought to you, and you consider every scenario. And ultimately where we came out, we value Mackenzie so highly and just thought it was better for the Nationals to keep him. And
you still got 2 more years of this deadline stuff. So you could still deal him. You'd get better value now because you'd have, under team control through the next 2 seasons. But for now, Mackenzie Gore is going to stay. Not surprisingly, they sent Kyle Finnegan to Detroit. Now, remember, Finnegan was on the street well into spring training when they brought him back. And he's had some rough outings, but he finished up before the trade deadline pretty well. So he now goes to Detroit. And also Alex Call, another outfielder who they claimed on waivers, I guess, last year. He goes to the Dodgers. They get prospects in return. The crazy thing about this team and the pitching staff, if you watch them, they're how terrible they are. They're 29th in Major League Baseball out of 30 teams in ERA. They traded 4 pitchers this week. They traded relievers Luis Garcia and Andrew Chafin to the Angels on Wednesday before shipping starter Michael Soroka to the Cubs the other day. And then the deal was made just before the trade deadline. This was DeBartolo on the overall strategy of what they did. Good for him for unloading some crap on the pitching staff, but he was able to do it, and this was part of the overall that he was looking to do.
We were just looking at the roster, taking opportunities where whatever was in the best long-term interest of the Nationals, and getting as many young players as we could to get back to where we want to be, next year and beyond. So that was our focus, is to bolster the farm system. When we're unfortunately not in the playoff race this year, use that opportunity to, most of the players were guys that were going to be free agents and departing the club. And, for us, it made sense to just get as many young players as we can to bolster the future of the team there.
Not just players, pitchers, a lot of them. They got 6 pitching prospects, which tells you, excuse me, the way things work today in baseball with all the injuries, and you just keep throwing arms out there, and maybe one of them develops into a great pitcher. Likely a couple of them are going to get hurt. That happens along the way. You lose a guy for a season here and there because of Tommy John. So of the deals that they made, they were careful to make sure they got lots and lots of pitching, and DeBartolo winds up with six pitching prospects.
We're looking for guys with stuff, guys that have performed well. A combination of both is really where our focus was. We feel like we got several guys that have that. Eric Swan, a really big guy with big stuff, strikes a lot of guys out, has velocity, can spin the ball. So just a lot of ingredients to be a successful major league pitcher down the road. Josh Randall, a guy in a big body, another big body that throws strikes and, has a good breaking ball also, is around the strike zone. So we really were just looking for future impact and future talent, and ideally guys that can stay in the rotation and be starting pitchers for us, but really anybody that can impact future teams. We were excited to get several of those guys. I mean, some of those guys have pitched in the big leagues, like Jake Eater, Clayton Beater. So, it really kind of ran the gamut, but we tried to focus on guys with stuff and guys that have performed well. Big
guys who can throw strikes. It's just keep throwing them out there. And that's what they did in making those deals. He also he didn't shy away from this kind of talk. One of the reasons that DeBartolo is there and Mike Rizzo is gone, certainly because of the lack of success that Rizzo had in the draft, but Rizzo was more old school, relied on the scouts. DeBartolo is the breed of executive that has come along with the analytics, and he did say that they relied more on analytics than they did in the past. Whatever that's going to mean, who knows? And a lot of what they do, is going to be dependent on how much ownership is going to spend. I think this is going to be a very interesting offseason for the Nationals in that they're out of the Masson deal, so they don't have to go to court all the time with the Orioles about money that they're owed, and they're probably going to wind up with the package of teams that Major League Baseball is going to put together and put on the MLB network. And the other part of this is that you don't have anybody really on the books. You don't have a manager on the books. You don't have a general manager on the books. And it's a very attractive situation for somebody buying. That's when you put any business up for sale. You want to get your costs down, and they've done that. They're in that spot. Plus, they're loaded up with prospects who can be flipped, for veterans at any point. But this is what the focus has been, especially with the draft, where they took younger players, and what they did at the trade deadline. So there's that. And then there's the Orioles, and nobody expected this. This was a year that they were supposed to be loading up at this point, loading up for the stretch run. And they dealt Cedric Mullins to the Mets yesterday. They packaged Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano to the Padres. They also sent Charlie Morton to Detroit in a last-minute deal. So, this is not the same Orioles team that started the season, and obviously it's not the same Nationals team, but the season will play out with each team going nowhere. Orioles open a series against the Cubs this afternoon, and the Nationals are home against the Milwaukee Brewers as the trade deadline passes, and lots of players are leaving town, and we'll see how these prospects develop. I want to get to what Mike Locksley said the other day. I missed talking about this yesterday, but I think it's a point that needs to be addressed. Locksley created some attention. I think it was last week when he was at the media day for the Big Ten. And he said, I lost the locker room last year. And I lost it because too many guys were concerned about what the other guys were making in NIL money. And so this year, he said, even if I have to put my desk in the locker room, that's not going to happen. And he put a sign on the locker room wall which says, leave your Louis belts, meaning your Louis Vuitton belts, outside this locker room. Leave your financial statements, leave your car keys outside the locker room. And then he went on to say, and this was the other day as they had a media day in College Park, and I'm interested in this stuff because I'm now a season ticket holder for Maryland football, August 30th, first game. He says, this is the new landscape. When you start paying people, they become pros. There's a moral compass that we have as coaches, as teachers, as administrators that, yeah, they're pros in their respective sport, but we still have some development to do as people, and that's where my energy and the things and experiences that I have to lead from the front with those things. I don't know if that dance is going to be viable anymore. I don't. This is what Nick Saban said and why he got out. They had the recruits at their house, and his wife said to him, I don't know why you're doing this anymore. All they want is how much money they're going to make. Not what kind of education am I going to get? What's my college experience going to be? How much money is it? And you have to understand it from the standpoint of kids 18 to 20 years old. Yeah, never seen money like this before. They don't know how to handle it. They don't look at long term. Who looks at long term when you're 18 years old? So this quaint notion that they're going to develop these players as people, and my energy and experiences will be towards that. I have to lead from the front. Well, you may invest that in a freshman, but if he's not happy with his playing time or he thinks he can get some money someplace else, he's leaving. He's going. The transfer portal has changed a lot of things. So we got to move in the direction of making these guys paid employees, and that's really where it has to be. And you have a contract. This is your contract, and it's 2 years. And at the end of the first year, you want to leave, there's a buyout. They want to get rid of you, there's a buyout. After 2 years, you can go negotiate a contract someplace else, or you can negotiate a new contract there. And once they opened things up, they had a chance to really set up a system which made sense. All those years that Jay Billis was saying pay the players, he wasn't saying salary. He was saying do it the same way you do it for like a music student on a scholarship. He or she can put out a CD if they still make those things, whatever it is. Could perform in an orchestra. Can perform gigs. If you're play the drums or you play guitar or something like that. You can't do that as an athlete. That's all they were asking, and that once they said okay, they gave up. They went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, hey, this is slavery. You can't have, players not paid and schools making billions of dollars in TV money and the coaches being paid $10 million a year. Once that ended and they had no system in place, well, then it became the anarchy that it is now. And, Mike Locksley grew up in an era where it was different. He coached at Maryland a couple of times, understands the culture and how things work at a school, which is a basketball school and really is never going to have the resources like Ohio State and Michigan and the big schools in the Big Ten to compete at that level. But to hang on to the idea that you're developing the players as people, that's going to have to be left to somebody else because that's no longer your role. And they have a new athletic director. His name is Jim Smith, who has been at Ohio State. He comes from the Atlanta Braves, so he's coming from professional sports with a background at the biggest athletic budget school in the country. He's here to make sure the players get paid, to make sure the booster money comes in, to make sure there's enough money to create a program where they win football games. And it's nice, Mike, if you want to develop people, but it's not going to happen as the football coach at Maryland. You want to go do that? Go coach high school. That's just a reality. I admire him for thinking he can still do that, but I just don't think it's possible anymore. Not with the way things are set up and not with the lack of commitment that if you want to leave at any time, you can. And even this is another one, and I think this is another loophole that they got to close. Let's say a player is even starting for a school for the first 4 games of the year, and he's playing well, and he's outplaying his NIL money. He can just check out, say that's a redshirt year, and go someplace else. Doesn't count. Yeah. So there's a lot that has to be shored up here. And for Mike Locksley to hang on to this notion of being a teacher, it's admirable, but I don't think it's realistic anymore. Coming up, lots of yak out of Ashburn yesterday. Some interesting things said by Jaden Daniels, including why he kicked a guy out of the huddle for a false start. That's leadership, Holmes. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630. Oh, all of Washington holds its breath. Will Terry McLaurin be traded? Or will the team finally give him the contract extension, which he deserves, but at what price? Never thought it would happen this way, but here we are with one of the best players that they have ever had, and they got a bunch of Hall of Famers. But on and off the field, there's been nobody like Terry McLaurin that I can remember. And what about Jaden Daniels? What about him? What about having his top receiver, a good friend, and someone who he texts with all the time? They text plays back and forth to one another. The serenity has been interrupted by what has gone on, and I think it shocked a lot of people yesterday when they got the news that Terry McLaurin is requesting a trade. It doesn't always end with the player being traded, but sometimes it does. And, you know, is this going to go the way of others in the past where it's just an impassable situation and they have to move on? Anyway, speaking of moving on, this got some play yesterday. This was the last question that Jaden Daniels answered at his news conference yesterday, his scheduled news conference. I think context is everything. If it were like Joe Theismann, and Joe Theismann volunteered, guys, his press conferences were a lot different back in the day, but he might say something like, I can tell you this, it's a difference between night and day this year. Now, the stories that circulated yesterday off the news conference where, hey, Jaden Daniels says it's night and day this year. I think context is everything. They used to call these, when I got in the business, they called these actualities. That doesn't make sense anymore. They call it sound bites. Somebody makes a comment, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. Sometimes it's a piece of an interview. They call them sound bites. So this was a sound bite, and I think leaving in the question that was asked by George Wallace of WTOP is important for context here in this question to Jaden Daniels.
Can you tell a difference after 7 training camp practices this year that it's night and day from a year ago?
Yeah, I think so. Just like I said, just being more comfortable in the offense, another year under my belt, under the system, and trying to understand what Cliff is calling, what we want to accomplish as an offense, and I got different tools in my tool belt, as Coach O.G. Johnson, Bobby Johnson would say, having tools in my tool belt to get to different protections, get to different runs versus certain looks. So, yeah, most definitely night and day.
So it's not exactly Jaden Daniels going, hey, guys, this year compared to last year, night and day. Now, I have noticed Jaden Daniels a lot looser this year. I think there were things that he was hesitant to say last year. He would answer the questions. He would be cooperative, but he wasn't very expansive. It's a lot different this year. He's a lot more relaxed in these interviews. He's a lot more relaxed in these news conferences. And last year, you got to remember this, at this time last year, he had not been named the starter. I mean, Caleb Williams was named the starter for the Bears on the first day of rookie minicamp. It wasn't until, I think, a week before the season, maybe going into the last exhibition game, that Dan Quinn finally said, Marcus Mariota is going to be the backup and Jaden Daniels is going to be the starter. So he was, trying to prove himself, and he said he had no problem with that. He wanted to prove himself, which he did. Well, now he's the clear leader of the team. And I don't think, based on the way he comports himself, that you would expect this from him, because he's very respectful, very modest, certainly not a loudmouth. But during practice yesterday, and we don't know who the player was, but a player had a false start, and Jaden Daniels threw him out of the huddle.
It's a standard that we set on the offensive side, and I'm the one that's got to uphold the standard. And that's, if guys are false starting, the next guy up, stuff like that. And even for me, it's like holding myself accountable. If I mess up, I'll look to Zach. I'll look to guys like that to hold me accountable too. But, I mean, that's just holding leadership-wise, like not letting nobody fall underneath the standard.
And do you do that like right away, going off leadership? Like sometimes there's a bad rep, bad series on offense. You'll go to a receiver, or even like I've seen like assistant coach Ingram or something, and I'm assuming you're correcting or tweaking something. Like, do you feel like your voice as a leader has a lot more weight now than it did a year ago today, like training camp last year?
I don't know. I just think you got to probably ask my teammates about that. But I would say for me, it's more so like if I see something, like go out there and communicate instead of trying to hold back and hopefully somebody understands what I'm thinking. But more so was just like, for me, just really going out there and speaking. If I wanted a guy to run a certain route like this, have him go and tell him this is what I see, or, you know, talk to Cliff, talk to Vita, talk to Brian, talk to Blau, you know, people like that.
That's what they call leadership. And Dan Quinn said yesterday in his news conference that it's not always Jayden Daniels chewing somebody out. Sometimes it's positive reinforcement.
Sometimes you go to tell somebody, man, do that exactly the same space. I didn't throw it to the right spot. So I don't want you to think every time he's going to somebody it's correcting. Sometimes it's reinforcing. Man, you hit every part of that. That's on me to make sure it's in the right location. Other times you're exactly right. Hey, I want that, you know, bend it more flat down the line, or I'm going to throw it away from another player's leverage there. So when we see the coverage to go, there was a great interaction between him and Sinnott the other day. There was a certain blitz that Ben had to look quickly to go to it. Jayden put it right on him. So I saw them talking afterwards that connection happened so quickly. Maybe last year that wouldn't have been, but like this specific play, they went, they talked about it, that's it. And so that made me happy too. On that particular play, he was just going to acknowledge to Ben, man, like that was the route, that was the right spot. And so I think there's all three things. One, acknowledgement. Two, like on a good play, or one, you're in the right space, or three, here's why I saw what could be different. So there's all sorts of ones, but the communication is the main thing. Like, if you see it, say it.
That's one of the big things, too, about the Quinn system, is he wants the players to lead themselves. You know, you find the leadership, and, you know, he likes to sit back and watch players, you know, instructing each other, making corrections. That's really, you know, accountability that he's looking for. Anyway, well, Terry sits. Looks like Deebo Samuel is the number one guy. And this was Daniel on the connection that they've made in the short period they've been together.
The guy's played a lot of football, and he's very understanding of different coverages and routes. And, you know, the guy is a pro, and he works hard. So for me, it's like I just go out there and try to communicate this is what I want versus this look versus this coverage. And he go out there and he puts in the work and he understands it.
And Mutual Admiration Society, Kay Adams was doing her podcast out there up in Adams. And she had Deebo on. She had Jayden on as well. But this was Deebo on working with a quarterback who's in his second year. Remember, he comes from San Francisco, so he's played with some veterans. He's also played with Brock Purdy, who took a team to a Super Bowl. And this was Jayden on Deebo on what he's noticed from Jayden in the short period they've been together.
How smart he is.
How smart.
Like the things that he see, how fast he processes it, and when he at the line of scrimmage, you know, he has the ability to change the plays. And every time he didn't change the play, like I feel like it worked. So how fast he processes it and how smart and calm he is out there in the huddle.
He said your ability to track the ball is really wowing him. What do you think of that?
It's just something I've been working on with, you know, Coach Bobby. We call him B. He's the receiver coach. One thing, our job is to go out there and catch the ball. So every day, you know, we're doing ball drills during special teams period and before practice.
And is it possible that Deebo Samuel is the number one guy this year? I hope not. Hope they get Terry done, but that's where they are now. He's running all the number one routes for the Commanders. One more thing from the Adams podcast, when she had Jayden on, and this is how things have changed so much. It wasn't that long ago when the Commanders held open practice and, like, nobody was there. I remember when they had it in Richmond, and that turned out to be a big disaster. They were hoping to get people to show up, and they didn't get the kind of turnout that they were looking for, and that deal turned out to be a bad deal for Richmond. And they made the deal at the right time. They made it after RG3's rookie year. But then as things disintegrated from there, so did the enthusiasm for the team. Well, now Jayden Daniels is beloved, and people bestow gifts upon him when he's out there signing autographs after practice. And this was Daniels, who I don't think really has a full understanding of just how low things got here. Back in the day, of course, this was a great fan base, and going back to the days of Carlisle when people would fill the stands and watch practice in the brutal heat and so forth, and they had more practices that were open as well. But I don't think he has a full understanding of how low things got before he got here. But right now, he's loving all the attention.
We got the best fans in the NFL. So, I appreciate them for everything that they do for me. Without them, practices wouldn't be fun. The games wouldn't be lit. So I'm excited for the season, see the home field advantage.
Jaden just said he has the best fans in the NFL. Usually, when a player, a quarterback, is getting gifts brought to them regularly at camp, whether it's footballs or basketballs or murals, usually it's a what?
A rug.
A rug. You have a rug today? Can we see the rug? Usually when this happens, it's like It's like Derek Jeter. It's Eli. There's a retirement tour going. You are a second-year quarterback. What is with the gifts? What's happening here?
I don't know, but I love them.
Where are you going to put this? This is from a fan. This is unbelievable. What is with the gifts? What's happening?
I love them. I love them. I love them.
We'll give this back and make sure it's okay. What is the perfect gift to bring you think? What is on Jaden's wish list?
I don't know. I just started receiving them. I got a mural. I got a rug. I had custom basketball that had Rookie of the Year on it. So I appreciate it because people take a lot of time out their day to make stuff, and it doesn't go unnoticed. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, he's actually wearing a bracelet that a little girl gave him. I mean, this is everything would be just so hunky dory if they had Terry McLaurin under contract, but that is a fly in the ointment right now. But Jaden Daniels soaking up all the attention. One last thing from the sound bites from yesterday. This was Dan Quinn on what he's seen from Laramie Tunsil, who was the big trade that they made in the offseason with Houston to bring in the veteran left tackle to protect him. And then Josh Connerly, who was their first-round draft pick, who they hope can play a right tackle. And it's been Tunsil who's been mentoring Connerly, showing him the ropes. And Dan Quinn, again, this is how he likes to coach his team. He is absolutely kvelling about this.
Laramie's walked that walk earlier, and I would say to a certain degree last season, Marcus was really instrumental for us, Mariota, with Jaden. He's one of the very best teammates I've ever been around. That type of connection of player to player, it's really, really strong. And so to see that starting to begin with Laramie and Josh and having that much trust in somebody, that Josh does, of watching him and learning, you can imagine what an invaluable experience that is for Josh. There's coaching side, but then there's another side. Not one stance is the same. Not one set is exactly the same. So I think it's a really cool thing. It does have to happen, on its own with, spaces to do it. And, we're really fortunate that way. But it makes me think of Marcus and Jaden and the importance of that. Those talks, just the two of them, going through a technique or a situation. And it's a big deal.
Big difference here, too. Laramie Tunsil's not concerned about Josh Connerly taking his position. Laramie Tunsil's making big money, and he's here to play left tackle, and that's his job. That's not going to change. The difference last year was Mariota comes here, and I know he understood the deal. I'm sure when they signed him, they said, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback, and it's probably going to be Jaden Daniels, and we expect you to work with him, and if all goes well with him, he's going to start. But if he's not ready to go, you start. That was the plan going in. But to have gone out of his way as he did to work with him, and if you've seen the Atlanta game, the video, I think it was an NFL Films treatment of this, where you had a timeout call because I guess Jaden took a shot and he was trying to get himself together. And Mariota comes over and he says, let your natural talents take over and throw a touchdown pass here, which he did to Zach Ertz. And that was invaluable for them. Plus, he came in and played a couple of times, played against Carolina, was ready to go. And, could it be that this is the kind of culture that will ultimately foster these great development of players, the young players that they draft, like Connerly. That's going to be huge. It didn't always work this way, especially with quarterbacks. This great situation that they had last year with Mariota and Daniels, it wasn't like that in the past. And, a lot of times a quarterback would come in as a draft pick, and here's a veteran going, oh, he's here to take my job. I'm not going to make this easy for him. The famous one is the Sonny Jurgensen and Billy Kilmer saying, I don't care which one of us plays as long as he doesn't. And that goes back to there was a strike in 1974. The veterans were out. And although Theismann was a veteran of Canada, he was not considered a veteran in the NFL since he hadn't played a regular season game yet. And so while those two were sitting out in the strike, Theismann has a pretty good exhibition game, and he's talking to reporters after the game, and he says something to the effect, I'm going to keep those two old men on the bench. And that's when Billy Kilmer picked up the paper, read it, and called Sonny and said, we can't have this. That's when they started to call him Theismann, which is, Joe Theismann's real name. But Roger Valdesteri, the sports information director at Notre Dame, said change it to Theismann because it rhymes with Heisman. So they didn't treat him all that well. And it can go the other way, too. I remember talking to Jim Hart. Jim Hart came here for the last year of his career. He was 40 years old. He played like 17, 18 years with the Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals. They drafted Neil Lomax to be the starter. They did not get rid of Hart. Hart stayed on the team, and he said he didn't want my mentoring. He didn't want me to help him. So it can go both ways. But, you got Tunsil being being the coach, the mentor to a young tackle, and we know how it worked out with Mariota and Daniels. Coming up, two quarterbacks, both could wind up in the Hall of Fame, and neither one could win a ring. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
Now, from ESPN 630, your D.C. Sports Center.
We're brought to you by NATCA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. They bring you home safely. Few thought it would come to this, but here we are. Terry McLaurin has requested a trade from the Commanders, according to multiple outlets, which could be a negotiating tactic to ramp up talks on an extension. McLaurin has been in camp but not working out. He does have a year left on his contract, but could possibly sit out games if he doesn't get an extension or is not traded. Baseball, Nats are back home to open a weekend series against Milwaukee, minus some of the players who finished the series in Houston Wednesday. Two last-minute deals yesterday. Outfielder Alex Call to the Dodgers, Kyle Finnegan to the Tigers. Orioles are in Chicago this afternoon to play the Cubs. Coverage here 1:30. They were big sellers at the deadline, including Cedric Mullins, Charlie Morton, and All-Star Ryan O'Hearn. And WNBA, Mystics are at Atlanta Sunday. They lost to Golden State last night. D.C. weather, cloudy, high 79. Andy Pollin, ESPN 630.
Do you have 3 ex-wives and your current trophy wife wants a life insurance policy 3 times the size of the policies you had to purchase for your previous mistakes? If so, you need to call Big Lou at Term Provider, 800-830-4914. Big Lou is intimately familiar with your problems, and if you're 50 or 60 years old and in reasonably good health, a $1 million policy should only cost about $100 to $200 per month. Big Lou may have a solution for your previous policies as well. You may even save enough money to lighten the load on your new $1 million policy. Remember, call Big Lou. He's like you, except he's only on number 2. Call Term Provider at 800-830-4914. That's 800-830-4914. For $1 million in term life insurance that you can live with, call Big Lou at 800-830-4914 or biglou.com. That's 800-830-4914 or biglou.com.
When kids need medical care, they will often face stressful and life-changing experiences. From complex treatments to long hospital stays, these special patients miss out on the things that most kids take for granted and let kids be kids. That's where Starlight Children's Foundation comes in. Since 1982, Starlight Children's Foundation has transformed the in-hospital experience for more than 17 million seriously ill kids in 800 children's hospitals and facilities across the United States. Our state-of-the-art programs like Starlight Virtual Reality, Starlight Hospital Wear, and Starlight Gaming let kids just be kids, if even for a few moments. Whether donning an action figure gown instead of standard hospital issue, or settling into gamer mode, if it brings a smile, a laugh, or just a break from their reality, it's happiness delivered. Learn more at starlight.org. That's starlight.org.
In classrooms across the country, chronic absenteeism is on the rise.
Sophia A., grade 4, absent.
Julio M., grade 6, absent.
Aisha S., grade 12, absent.
These absences are often due to the absence of crucial needs, like transportation, healthcare, a working computer, mental health support. The list goes on.
Olivia H., absent.
Preston L., absent.
Chloe B., absent.
The reasons why they're absent are very real, and yet the solution is someone present to help them along their path. When site coordinators from communities and schools are on hand, they connect kids to the resources they need. And when they do, 99% of students are present and remain in school throughout the year.
Jacob O., grade 10,
present.
Communities and Schools works directly with students, helping them overcome obstacles to succeed in school and in life. Learn more at communitiesinschools.org. Being present matters.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Lost in all this yak about Terry McLaurin and the request for a trade is that the city council is due to vote in about 40 minutes on this stadium deal between the city and the Commanders. They were looking for some last-minute changes, some of the council people, but Phil Mendelssohn believes he's got the 8 votes to pass it, and then it would go up to Congress, and that vote won't take place until next month, but that would be a huge step forward. So we'll see. We'll see if there's some last-minute, jockeying for a few more things in the deal, but it looks like the deal is ready to be voted on. They asked the mayor about it the other day, and she said, "Today's Wednesday. Let's wait till the vote on Friday." So we'll keep an eye on that. Coming up at 11 o'clock, I will be off and off on vacation, not here next week. So I will be watching to see what happens, but won't be able to comment on it even on Monday because I will be out of town all of next week. All right, this is an interesting question here because I'm thinking about this. You have a situation, most teams aren't fortunate enough to have this, but you have this in Green Bay, where you had Brett Favre, Hall of Fame quarterback, won a Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers succeeds him, won a Super Bowl. Both are going to the Hall of Fame. So it happens that way. San Francisco, Joe Montana wins 4 Super Bowls. Steve Young wins 1. The succession there. It was supposed to happen that way in Indianapolis. Peyton Manning wins a Super Bowl. Andrew Luck was supposed to win 1, but shockingly, he retired after 7 years in the NFL, even though he had come back from a pretty serious shoulder injury, and it looked like, at age, I don't even think he was 30 yet, he was going to have a long run, and certainly was going to be, if he didn't win 1, headed to the Hall of Fame. Look at the Chargers. The Chargers had, I believe, 17 years or 16 years from Phillip Rivers. He's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer, but I think he's probably going to get in, and he didn't even announce his retirement until recently. He was kind of floating out there like if anybody wants to sign him. He spent his last year with the Indianapolis Colts, but almost went if somehow the 49ers with Brock Purdy with a banged-up arm and Josh Johnson, who's here now but had a concussion, if somehow they had beaten Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game, then they would have brought in Phillip Rivers to play in the Super Bowl. Believe it or not, having never played a game for the 49ers, he would have been the starter. But he's been now retired for 3 years, and he was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday. We'll get to that. But also on the show yesterday was Justin Herbert, the current Chargers quarterback, who is, tracking to have a chance to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going into his 6th year now. Amazing. Came in the draft after Terry McLaurin, getting ready to start his 6th year. And they talked about his career and who he had watched coming out of college and who he might have modeled his pro game after.
We watched a lot of Matt Ryan with his, play action fakes. I think that was something that we always talked about, how quickly he snapped his head around, was able to get his eyes downfield. And then Drew Brees, his footwork too, and just the way he went through his progressions and played the quarterback position. I think those 3 guys were, really important for me watching.
Okay, explain footwork with Tom Brady. What exactly is that, and is it teachable?
Yeah, I think, the easiest way to describe it would be just to time everything up with the route. You know, a short route is going to have quicker footwork, and you know, a longer route, play action is going to time it up. And one of the things that I always try to avoid is standing still in the pocket and just, you know, bouncing around, because you have a tough time seeing when you're going up and down. And you know, as long as you're in rhythm and your feet are aligned with how deep the receiver is going to get, you know, I think it makes it easier on the throw, and definitely easier, you know, stepping up in the pocket as well.
Okay, but what's that clock like in your head when you go back to pass? At what point do you go, uh-oh, like I got to start, I got to have my head on a swivel?
Yep. As soon as you get to the top of your drop, where you're dropping back, and you know, it's either a quick setup where you're hoping the ends go around you and the tackles push them upfield, or you're finding a lane to run through. But it's quick, and you know, that's just how fast those guys are on defense. And you got to protect the ball, you got to avoid sacks, and you know, that's something that, you know, Coach Harbaugh talks about all the time. So we're gonna get better at that this year.
What was your welcome to the NFL hit?
I would say I was rolling out one year, tried to make this play where I could spin in the pocket and just kind of run around, and then I got hit by Max Crosby and I didn't even see him. And that was when I was like, yeah, these guys are much faster than I am. I got to be able to step up, throw it away. Taking a sack is not the worst thing, but you know, running into that thing, that was bad.
And you know, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, two of the greatest ever, had no problem just kind of going into the fetal position instead of, you know, you have to live to call another play. And that's hard for you, because in college and high school, you could get away with this stuff. In the NFL, you can't. How tough is that to go, just take a sack or just throw it away?
Yeah, that's the tough part, because like you said, high school and college, you'd be able to make some of those plays, and you know, you'd get rewarded for making a crazy play like that. And then you come to the NFL, and you know, everyone on defense is faster than you, and you know, sometimes it's okay to, you know, wave the white flag, go down and live for another play, where you know, a sack is not as bad as a fumble, and a throwaway is not as bad. So it's just kind of living through that list and making sure that you're protecting the ball and putting the team in a good position to win.
Who's your rival?
Shoot, I would say we've got a lot of rivals. I definitely would say the Chiefs, Raiders, and the Broncos. I think the AFC West is so competitive, and you know, we've definitely you know, had our fair share of competitions with those guys. The Chiefs have gotten us the past few years.
But do you hate the Chiefs? Like, do you hate one of them a little more than the other ones?
I would just say it's been a little lopsided the past couple of years, and that's just something that we, you know, we've got a great opportunity to play them twice this year, and you know, we know how good they are and how much success they've had in the league over the past several years. So it's always a good opportunity for us to go play and be the team that we want to be.
What advice would you give a rookie quarterback? Let's say Cam Ward calls you up and said, give me some advice on what it's like.
Yeah, I would say to sacrifice now so you can enjoy everything later. Just to go through everything and, you know, watch an extra hour of film, you know, do an extra hour of recovery, make sure you're taking care of your body. And, you know, there's always going to be times to, you know, go hang out with your friends and do all these extracurricular activities. But right now you're a quarterback. You know, the franchise has put their trust in you to lead this entire organization and to make sure that you're doing everything you can for your teammates, the coaching staff, the community, because it's really important. And at the end of the day, if you're doing that, you're in good steps.
That's Justin Herbert, the current Chargers quarterback. He didn't play last night in the Hall of Fame game. And actually, Trey Lance looked pretty good, but you got to take that with a grain of salt. I mean, it's the first exhibition game. They're going to play 5, you know, with the Hall of Fame. So, you know, take it for what it's worth. But, yeah, Trey Lance against guys who are probably going to be gym teachers in a couple of months look good. But I remind everyone about Osaka, which was Danny Werfel in 2002 when he came off the bench in the second half. It wasn't a Hall of Fame game, but it was one of those early, you know, exhibition games to be played overseas in Osaka. And Steve Spurrier got really excited about that. And Steve Mariucci is saying to him, hey, Coach, it's the first exhibition game. These guys he's playing against, they're not going to be in the league. And you know, so we learned a little bit about Spurrier and his lack of knowledge of the NFL in those days. Also, that season, too, was crazy. NBC, Channel 4 was doing those games. The late George Michael did the play-by-play. and he had Jeff Bostic down on the sidelines doing the interviews. And after the game, Wuerffel had started. It was the last exhibition game. Those days, they would play the starters in that last preseason game. And he didn't look very good. And so Bostic asked Spurrier after the game, are you concerned about the performance of Danny Wuerffel? He goes, yeah, Danny didn't play too well today, so we're not going to start him in the first game. We're going to go with Shane Matthews. As a matter of fact, Shane Matthews did beat Arizona in the first game, but that team finished 7-9 and 5-11 next year. Not too good. All right, that was Herbert, who is a possibility for the Hall of Fame. He's got a long way to go, and his career has to track in the direction it's going. But if he has another, he could play another 10 years, and if he looks that good for the next 10 years, maybe. Phillip Rivers had this great long career with the Chargers. Never made it to the Super Bowl, made it to the AFC Championship game, but never got over the hump, and finished up with the Indianapolis Colts. And then, even though he hasn't played in 3 years, he's gone on to be a high school coach in Alabama. He's got 10 kids, so he wants to be close to home. There was some talk that he might go to some other teams, which is why it wasn't until last week that he officially announced his retirement. And having played in Indianapolis the last year, he wanted to go back and sign one of those one-day contracts and retire as a Charger, and talked about that delay with Dan Patrick.
The reason there was a little bit of a wait is I honestly wasn't. There were a couple November, Decembers there in 2021, 2022 where I was staying ready. I threw on shoulder pads a few times and a helmet and was throwing in the yard and working just in case. And there were a few things that kind of got close. But then the last 2 years is pretty much I've known I've been done. It really just timed. I wanted to retire a Charger and do it right with the Chargers over 16 years. Gates coming up with the Hall of Fame, one of my favorite all-time teammates and locker mate, side by side for 16 years. I was doing some video stuff for him, and I was like, "Hey guys, when are we going to do this? I want to retire a Charger. Should we do something on video?" And it just all worked out.
What team or teams called you?
I knew you were going there. I guess I teed you up for that one, Dan.
You can say it now.
No, I know it doesn't matter. Yeah, well, I think, it was the year that the 49ers had the injuries at quarterback, and before early on, before Purdy really got going. It was there was still probably 6 weeks left in the year, and it was so there was a little interaction I had there with John Lynch. Certainly kept in contact with the Colts that first year or so out. When the Saints had the injuries, I think they called Drew and I both. I remember being on a phone call with Drew, and it was over Christmas, and it was like the first Christmas I'd been off and not playing, and I was like, I can't believe I'm even considering this. But Drew and I ended up talking about, hey, were you serious? And he was asking me if I was serious. And I was like, it sounds good. It sounds good in theory. But then it's like, man, I felt like the later the season went, I was going to become a guest quarterback. And to me, that just was what ultimately the teams didn't want me. It didn't get that far to where it was in my control, but I didn't want to be a guest quarterback. You wanted to at least have some camaraderie and some sense of, man, I've been on this journey with you guys at least for half a season. But when it got to the playoffs, it's like, man, you're going to go and play one game, and you're either the hero to help them win, or you came in and cost them a playoff game. So it just didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, you could have been a Joe Flacco.
Yeah, which, shoot, I thought it was awesome. I loved watching Joe and pulling for Joe when he was in that situation.
But take me back to when you came out of college. I remember the knock on you was your arm angle, or how you threw. Like, it felt like that was one of those, you just didn't throw it the way the other quarterbacks threw the ball. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, it is. I think it gradually got less and less awkward, even as my career went. There is a uniqueness to it, and I appreciate that now. I hear people say, "Oh man, that's how Phillip Rivers threw the ball." So I guess there's uniqueness to it that's ended up being kind of one of my trademarks. But growing up as the son of a coach, I was the ball boy and water boy when my dad was coaching high school ball, 5, 6, 7 years old, and I was throwing a regulation size football. So that's the only way I could throw it. You kind of laid it in your hand, and and pushed it. And so then as I grew up, as I got bigger and stronger and my hand could reach, there was still an element of that, muscle memory motion that just became my own. And so that's where it was. I remember Norm Chow. We had one of the great offensive coaches of all time in college football at NC State my freshman year. And the first day he watched me practice, he asked me if I was hurt. Is your shoulder bothering you? And I said, no, my shoulder's fine. And he sent the tape off to Mike Holmgren and said, hey, you need to take a look at this. And Coach Chow ended up telling me, Holmgren said, if he's not getting balls batted down and he's accurate, he said, heck with it, leave it alone. And so we did.
How has the position changed? Like, what's the most important part of playing the position?
I still think, and I'm biased, I guess, a little bit. I bet if you ask most pocket passers like myself, they may say this, may not. I still think you got to be able to stand in the pocket and make quick decisions and be accurate with the football and throw it from the pocket on 3rd and 8 in crucial situations on a 2-minute drive. All those things, that is still going to be a necessity of playing the position. To me, I think it's a bonus. It's a bonus if you can do the other stuff, like many of these guys nowadays can. The Josh Allens and Lamar Jacksons and Bo Nix has the ability to run. As had an unbelievable rookie year. Obviously Mahomes, and I'm leaving guys out unintentionally. But if you can do those things, it helps you. But you still got to be able to stand in there and make a throw and take a hit right under the chin. Because if you can't do that, if all you can do is just kind of run around and you're a 50% passer, I don't think you can last.
That's Phillip Rivers, quarterback from Charger past, and you just heard from Justin Herbert, quarterback of Charger present. No Super Bowls for Rivers, not even an appearance, and so far none for Herbert. Will he get there? That's a question, but just interesting to listen to both of them talk and to think about that storyline there, that you have these two great quarterbacks, yet it's not quite enough to get you there. Now, Herbert can run. He's big, more of a pocket passer than some of the modern era quarterbacks. But, Phillip Rivers, he's another one of those. If he comes along today, is he as valuable as he was back in the day? He was a great passer. He won a lot of games with the Chargers. But if you're not a runner, it severely handicaps you. This is what Steve Young keeps talking about. He says, if Peyton Manning comes along today, maybe he's not what he was. Tom Brady comes along today, maybe not what he was. They're both smart quarterbacks, and knowing the game is a big part of it. But, here are these two guys, and you just wonder, is this going to end with no Super Bowls and two possible Hall of Fame quarterbacks? I think Rivers is probably going to get in, maybe not in the next couple. He's not eligible, I guess, for another 2 years. And now that he's officially announced his retirement, it won't be for another 5 years. I don't know how that works. And he's probably not going to be a first ballot guy, but he's got a shot to get in, and we'll see what happens with Herbert down the line. Anyway, you can kind of set your calendar by me. If you've been listening to me on the radio here, I've been back in D.C. on the air for 32 years now, right? Coming up, and it's 48 years of radio for me overall, but based on my days in Texas and New York and things like that. But this has been something that I've done since I was a kid. I have friends that have a house on a reservoir in Vermont, and it's just beautiful. The weather is great. They have a boathouse which overlooks the water. You can sit out there and just chill or read or hang out. It's really nice. You can go hiking, canoeing, kayaking, all the outdoor things that you like to do. And I have gone there just about every year. When with the kids when they were younger, they're now adults, so that they have other things that they're doing. My son and daughter-in-law live out in Seattle. But that has been something that I've done just about every year in the first week of August. Sometimes it's late July, but this year, here it is. It's August 1st, so I'm heading off to Vermont tomorrow, and that's, it just kind of resets the year for me because I come back and then we dive right into football. We have the first exhibition game, which I think is the 8th, so it's next Saturday, right? I think it's Saturday that they play against the New England Patriots, and then they have two home exhibition games. One of them is against Baltimore to finish up. I forget what the other one is, But, that's one thing about me that people know about me. I'm a routine-oriented person. So I'm following through on my routine to go up to Vermont. So I will not be here next week. Will not be able to comment on what's happening with the city council vote coming up hopefully within the next hour or so. And hopefully by the time I get back, Terry McLaurin has a contract extension. Man, if he doesn't have one, we're getting into some territory here, which, has happened in the past. But of all the people, not just whoever played for this team, but of all the people who you've been able to observe in the NFL, you would think that the last person this would happen with would be Terry McLaurin. Yet, on August the 1st, here we are. He doesn't have a contract extension, and he's asked for a trade. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre when you look at what he has meant to this team and what he has been as a leader and as a player. And it's come down to this with this guy. Of all the players that they've ever had, it's come to it with this guy. I'm sure Bram will have plenty to say on that. Whatever comments I make on it, I guess will have to be on Twitter. But I'm off for a little vacay, and I will be back a week from Monday at 9 a.m. So enjoy the week, and I will see you on the 11th.